We've all heard about flying cars and autonomous flying cars, and we even saw one at the Detroit Auto Show. Is this a reality? Well, when you think about autonomous driving, and we've talked about this in the past and some of the hurdles that need to be cleared, those same factors come into flying cars, except you're now adding flying. Do you really want to be flying up in the air with those people that you're driving on the road with? Well, there's a lot behind the scenes before we get to that point. So we talked to Peter from Infor, and he tells us the real facts and what you need to know. Well, we're lucky enough to have Peter Maithel. He's with Infor, and he's going to tell us a lot about what's going on with flying cars. I mean, it's always seems like the Jetsons when we were kids. We're like, oh, yeah, but it's not actually that. So, Peter, welcome to the show. Tell us,
Thank you,
what
Lauren.
flying car, what it's really about with flying cars. I mean, it's always a great concept, but what's the reality?
So flying cars, like you said, it's a Jetson kind of thing. We can all relate to it from our childhood, depending on, of course, I don't want to date myself too much, but I think the allure of flying cars is that, they can help to alleviate traffic congestion in urban areas, right? So if you can just get up above the crowd, so to speak, and zoom over to where you want to go and then drop down conveniently into that spot, it's great. So conceptually, it has a lot of appeal. I think, obviously, as they say, there's many a slip between the cup and the lip, the old saying, right? That my mom used to always tell me. I think I just dated myself again. But, it's just the fact that between concept and reality, obviously, there's many steps to be taken, which is okay.
Right.
It's an idea. But, I don't even know where to begin. There's a lot of challenges with flying cars. Now, there's at least one company, possibly more, that do have flying prototypes. So they do exist, at least in some basic form, right? Obviously not marketed.
Right. I've seen a few of them over the last 10 years. I think Terrafugia had one. I don't know if there's still in business. There's, I think it's, is it Aleph? Is that how you say it?
Aleph, yeah, Aleph is the one that I was looking at recently, and they're an early stage startup. Yeah, so they have a prototype, and they're still around, and they've got, they're making a go of it. So that's great. We wish them well. But
oh no, I do too. There was a car company that had the wings that folded up. You could park it in your garage and then pull them out and take off.
Yes.
So there's been a couple of them.
That actually, I think there was one that even goes back maybe to the 80s or this. I mean, a long time back, people have been trying to come up with this. Yeah. The key with the flying.
What makes the success and the failure though of flying cars? I mean, yeah, cool. We're all sitting in traffic going, this is horrible. I've got things to do, places to go, people to see. We all want to like lift up above the traffic and take off, but there's a couple thoughts that come to mind immediately. Is this possible? What if everyone's trying to all lift up and go that way? Or a lot of vehicles? What kind of traffic congestion in the air could be a problem? Plus, I kind of worry about people that are on the roads, let alone in the air. Kind of concerns me because there's some really bad drivers. So I kind of wanted to get some feedback from you on that.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, what goes through my mind is, if I've got a crazy neighbor or friend who's we know there's a kind of a risky driver, shall we just say? And we all know, like you said, there's millions of them on the road. Maybe somebody thinks I'm a bad driver. Who knows, right? Maybe I am. But the point is, do we really want a free-for-all in the air above our heads?
Yeah.
I don't think we do. And imagine if there's a crash in the air above. All those parts are going to rain down on somebody down below, right? So, what if somebody's riding?
Liability is huge. Yeah.
Huge. And what if somebody's riding around in a flying car and decides to toss some garbage from a snack they're eating or a hot coffee out the window or whatever, or just anything? People throw stuff out of windows. It happens, right? There's all kinds of scenarios you can imagine. So I think there's some things that need to be worked through in terms of before this ever becomes a reality. And the parallel that's going through my mind is really autonomous vehicles, like there was
exactly what I was thinking.
So we're on the same page.
And they have the same parallel issues, right? So autonomous cars sound great. And unless every car on the road is autonomous, that could be a problem.
Exactly. That's the point. Exactly.
And there's no government regulations. Are there government regulations for flying cars?
No, but I mean, even with, there are none, of course, right now. So if this were to ever become reality, like you touched on an important point. Well, of course, in the case of autonomous cars, switching back for a second, that's all about trust. And that's why autonomous cars are sort of falling out of favor right now, that industries are having some challenges because there's been some trust issues with accidents and all that. So that's trusting the technology.
And there's been a death too.
There's been deaths. Yeah, there's been more than one death, I think. Yeah, exactly. But the other thing is the government regulation. when you talk about, these are basically not just cars, but these are aircraft. Okay, they're small
Mhm.
private aircraft flying around. That's what they would be, right? Yeah. So there's going to need to be, in addition to regulatory stuff, there's going to need to be air traffic control. We're a long way
Right.
from
And
there.
that's FAA, right? So
That's
they're already
FAA.
shorthanded, which scares
Exactly.
me because that's even outside of the autonomous cars. Who's going to be regulating cars? And we see what's going on at airports today. We've never seen airplanes hitting each other on the ground. Suddenly, we seem to have a lot of unskilled traffic controllers, which concerns me. If you're driving a helicopter going from, like, Blade is one of the companies that goes from New York City to JFK, and I'm in a flying car,
Right. Oh
there's
yeah.
all different elevations.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm not a pilot, but I've been in enough small planes to know you really have to pay. I mean, like, more than you ever paid attention in a
Yeah.
car.
Yeah. It's a skill issue, and it's like, every driver or every pilot of a flying car would have to be trained to the same level as a commercial pilot, because
So
they'll
that takes
be,
a long time, though.
and it's
That's not a
impossible.
quick
No,
license.
no, it's not a quick license. So, could you have flying taxis? Yeah, in a sense, you kind of do,
Yeah.
because you have helicopters right now in urban areas that can, I think Uber was experimenting with helicopters. I don't know if they still have that
Right.
service.
I think they are in some areas. They have the Uber flight.
Yeah,
Blade is the biggest one in New York City. They seem to have captured the audience, so they've had incidences as well.
right.
And my concern is, if you're flying a car and I'm flying a helicopter or a small plane, and we're all sharing the airspace, there's only so much airspace on certain traffic patterns, as well as with large planes going into airports. But again, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, sure, you could probably take off, but an ultralight license is not going to be enough. And I've checked into the time it takes to get
Hmm.
a pilot's license.
Oh yeah.
Forget instrumentation when the weather's bad.
Yeah,
Just,
even just
I
a
want to be a
PPL.
pilot, and
Yeah,
you need money. And
yeah,
so it's going to eliminate the average person, maybe not in the future for a cab ride, because I know Bell
right.
Helicopter showed us something at the Geneva Auto Show years ago. It was an autonomous, which scares me as well, an
Yeah.
autonomous flying helicopter pod where it would land, you get in it, it would take it to your destination, and you would get out. That's fine, but I think there's a lot of other fears and things that
Hmm.
happen with wind and wind shear and
Oh, yeah.
birds and things that are way outside your control. So
Absolutely.
I'm assuming that's the same factors that would occur with a flying or an autonomous car.
I mean, birds are a big thing, right? Think about it. Even in a flying car, there are birds all over. Imagine if you hit a bird, down comes your
That
flying
would be
car.
bad.
That'd be very
Yeah,
bad. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
And so I think the next factor, that this is true with autonomous cars, so there's a parallel here: insurance. So it's
yes,
not just the insurance companies and who's going to write it, because they do write FAA insurance. It's the reinsurance companies that
I have
insure
to
the
insure you.
insurance
Yeah,
companies.
exactly.
They don't want anything to do with autonomous
Right.
cars. What's their thoughts on flying cars?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if that's been looked at, and certainly I'm not an
Mhm.
insurance expert, but just from a
Right.
practical person, the
Mhm.
liability, as I think you said earlier, the liability is potentially huge, right? So
Yeah.
the reinsurance companies are not going to want to insure the insurance companies.
Right.
So I mean, I know we're getting into the weeds here, but yeah,
No, no, but this is all, there's a parallel here. I mean, I cover automotive, and this is an absolute parallel. You got flying cars. So now you're sort of merging airline into automotive.
yeah,
And while it sounds cool that we could get into a Jetsons bubble and get us to our destination to zip off, the cartoon is great, but the reality may not be.
yeah, and that's why it hasn't. Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to poo-poo progress. I think progress is
No, I
great.
want to hear what you have to say. So,
But I just don't think I think it's great to, I think it's probably prudent to temper our enthusiasm about flying cars. And with
Mhm,
anything else, it starts with an idea. So yeah, some people are experimenting, more power to them.
mhm,
Maybe, I don't know, maybe 15 years from now, maybe 5 years from, I really don't know. Things tend to
mhm,
happen in times we can't predict. Maybe there will be some limited, I see, like I said, I see the possibility of a flying taxi type service.
mhm.
Whether it's autonomous or not is a different question.
I want a pilot
I
personally.
want a pilot. Yeah, I think I want a pilot. I
Yeah.
just don't like the
Yeah.
idea of autonomous anything
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And I think that's the biggest fear for consumers. But that sort of brings me to the whole thing with the air traffic control and you putting regulations in place. So if I wanted to buy a flying car, like we saw at the Detroit Auto Show this past year, and everyone was like, this is wild. And they're coming out in 2025. The price point is going to certainly deter the average person. You're talking on that particular one, close to $300,000.
Mhm.
And they're taking orders, of course.
Right.
So if I were to buy one and I have a pilot's license, I probably would need to have instrumentation for bad weather,
Mhm.
but I would assume you wouldn't want to. So could I fly that legally today if I were to purchase one and they delivered it to my landing strip at my home? Because some people do have landing strips at
Yeah,
their home.
they
I know.
do.
Is that possible that I could actually fly that today?
I don't think the states are ready to license people. I mean, I have not seen anything that says you can go to the Department of Motor Vehicles or the Department of Flying Vehicles, whatever you'd go to
The
get,
FAA.
yeah, yeah, so to get your, or to get your license. So I don't think the regulatory system is in place to issue those licenses, assuming the person is even qualified. Yeah, I just don't think that. What license would you issue? Would it be a pilot's license? Would it
It
be?
would have to be, you
It would
would
have to
think,
be
but
a
then you'd have to
pilot's
land it
license.
in an airstrip. You couldn't land it on a roadway because then you'd be violating all kinds of other rules. I just find the whole thing interesting. I mean, there are people, like I said, John Travolta. I have friends that have their own that can fly at an airport. So you would probably have to pay landing fees also, because when you land small planes, large planes, there's a fee for landing. And I
Well,
assume those would be in place as well.
yes and no.
The
So,
government might like that if they can make money off of us.
well, yeah, that's right. Well, in terms of landing fees and airstrips and all that, so the LF car that I was looking at that we were talking about, and I
Mhm.
think some of the others
Mhm.
too, they're all VSTOL of VTOL, I should say, vertical takeoff and landing. They don't require a runway. So you basically literally
Interesting.
just pick yourself off one spot, fly over, and drop down into another spot.
So
So
much like a helicopter.
exactly,
So you would
exactly.
need probably a helicopter license, I would assume, because how would you learn to hover otherwise?
Yes,
That
you
wouldn't be
probably
some.
would need something like that. And of course, you'd have to make sure that you didn't land your car on top of somebody else, right?
Yeah. Again, someone we hope is paying attention. So at Infor, you guys do a lot of research and finding out about this type of industry. Can you tell us some more about that?
So, okay, at Infor, we're a software company, one of the largest in
Mhm.
the world, and we build what we call enterprise software, which basically is a software that runs companies in the background. It may not always be the cool stuff you see on your phone and all that, but it's the stuff
Yeah.
that does the real work in the background. And
Mhm.
we focus on specific, what we call verticals or industries, automotive being one of them. We haven't gone into
Mhm.
the flying car vertical yet because it really is kind of young and
Yeah.
immature, but maybe one day we will. But we
Yeah.
are in aerospace and defense and automotive, and I focus on automotive. That's my role, is leading the automotive strategy. But it's interesting because the whole automotive industry is changing in such, and as
It
you would
is.
know, as an automotive journalist, and you're all over YouTube talking about all the different cars and things, but it's really moving, Lauren. I think I've even heard you say somewhat touch on this in some of your videos. But it's moving away from just the car as a piece of hardware to really
Correct.
all about the customer experience. Really,
Mhm.
that's what the industry is moving towards. And you've got this term called software-defined vehicles, right? Which is where
Mhm.
the software helps you define the characteristics, the performance characteristics of the vehicle, and also the experience that the customer has in the vehicle, right? So it can be
Mhm.
tailored. You can turn on certain options, and you can tailor the vehicle. Just like when you were talking about your Cadillac CT5 Blackwing review, right? We were talking about that before the
Right. Great car. A lot of
great
fun.
car. Yeah, I love it. I have one. Very, very happy with it. But in that and in many modern performance vehicles, you can configure everything, right? That's software defined because you can change your
Correct.
engine sound, your shift points, your suspension tuning. You can do it all in the vehicle. The Hellcats and
Mhm.
the Demons and all, they can do the same thing to the BMW, all of them, right? The
Mhm.
performance vehicles. So that whole concept of software-defined vehicle, there's and the customer experience. So when we get in our cars anymore, we want
Mhm.
a certain type of experience, which includes the performance of the vehicle, but it also includes things like infotainment, the music, or
Right.
the
Customizing
navigation.
it.
The
Mhm.
navigation, right? Whether we want to order pizza when we're driving, right? And have it waiting for us at our destination. And now Mercedes and others are now bringing AI into the car so that, the car, let's say, I mean, it's kind of a little spooky to me, but if you set it up in such a way, the car can know that, looking at all your calendar and all that, hey, you've got a trip, you're driving to, I don't know, Chicago tomorrow, or wherever it is you're driving
Mhm.
to. And oh, by the way, here's the weather on the route. And if you leave it, and I see you plan to be at your meeting at 9 a.m., therefore you need to leave at 6 a.m. based on weather and anticipated traffic. And oh, by the way, I've ordered a coffee for you at your favorite Starbucks along the way or whatever.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that AI is able to do that right now, right? So it's all about personalizing the experience. And so one of the things that we do at Infor, see, when you're a consumer consuming that experience, or dealing with that, or enjoying that experience, I should say, a person is probably not thinking about all the stuff that's going on in the background, right? Like when we
There's a
use
lot
our
of
phone,
software, a lot of lines of
how the
code.
software works, and all the data that needs to come together and be pulled together to make sense and present you with some options and whatever it is you're looking for. So what we do, and what Infor does, is help companies, automotive companies in my case, in the case of what I focus on, tie into that what we call an ecosystem. So it's not just the car and the manufacturer and the supplier, it's the infotainment provider, it's the nav systems provider, it's the retail provider, it's the government agencies that are, it's your, maybe your insurance company. You can buy insurance based on your driving habits now and all that.
I
Or
don't know if I like that one.
I
I've
don't
talked
like that
about that
either.
on other,
No, I don't like
yeah,
that either.
they're too much. I don't want them listening in my car, but I understand how
Exactly.
what you do is basically, let me get this right, the integration between what I'm doing at home
Yep.
and I'm on a phone call or I'm listening to a podcast, and when I get in my car, it's
Yep.
a natural, smooth transition.
Yep.
I think that's what people are really thinking. That would be nice, because how many times we've all been on a phone call and dropped the call. What the problem is with autonomous cars, and probably with autonomous flying cars, is the hackers. I'm
Yes. Oh,
assuming that
yes.
Infor has a huge firewall, but I don't know if there's ever a permanent firewall. It's a constant question I get. Is there a way to put up a permanent firewall to keep bad people out?
Oh yeah, the cybersecurity thing is a very big deal, right? And then some years ago, famously, as you know, some hackers deliberately, I mean, they were white hat hackers.
Right.
They hacked into a Jeep, if you recall, and they hacked
I remember. And a
yeah.
Tesla too.
And so that's a big thing for Infor. So we run on our back end, what we call our back end. Our systems are actually running on Amazon's cloud services,
nice.
Amazon Web Services, and that's very secure, about as secure as you can get. So is anything perfect? There's probably no perfect system in the whole world, right? I can't imagine, but it's pretty secure.
I
So
know everybody's working on it. The Germans have a whole consortium of all the German car companies working together trying to put up a permanent firewall, and even they can't. When you look at it, you're like, nothing. You need 100% secure, I think, before autonomous cars or autonomous flying cars would be something that consumers would feel confident in. And if you're 100% certain, and we can guarantee it, and I'm sure you're working toward that, I have no doubt that I think that's going to make people go, okay, I'll get an autonomous thing that's waiting for me outside.
Yeah, but you got to have that certainty, like you said. And that's a long way away. So, but no, we don't get into that specific aspect of it, but we do get into, we help companies, for example, get a handle on all their data. We help them, get their back-end IT systems to talk to each other so that they can create that seamless experience on the front end that you and I as consumers will see and experience in the vehicle. But all the back end sort of sausage making, if you will, all the dirty work,
the ugly part,
all the ugly part that goes on in the back on the back end. That's what we help companies do, so that customers at the end can have a good experience, right? And companies can then,
that's what all car companies want. They want you to come back and say, I had a great experience. This vehicle is great. And some of the new technologies and a lot of the brands are pretty impressive. And so I assume that's also car-to-car communication, which I actually saw in like 2009. I was at Continental in Berlin, Germany, and we got to see car-to-car communication. So you're driving down the road, an ambulance is coming. I don't see it. I don't hear it. I'm listening to music, but it tells you a notification on your screen. Is that something that Infor is also working with the infrastructure?
No, not directly with the infrastructure, no. But
so
we
just
are working
the car to the consumer.
We are working with companies like, for example, we'll work with a General Motors or a Ford or a Stellantis or Mercedes, or when many of these are our clients, or whatever, the Ferraris, whatever. We work with them to help them do what they need to do to communicate with the infrastructure, whatever else that they need to, or with the Googles or the anyone else, right? But they have to do some stuff on their end, and that's what we focus on. And we help suppliers, for example, so that they can be more effective and efficient and profitable in supplying what they need to automakers, to understand what companies need in terms of parts and projections for, forecasts, and then being able to prepare and produce the stuff that's needed. A big challenge, of course, is with the whole EV transitions. companies are, especially suppliers, like how much do we produce of EV stuff versus internal combustion parts, and we've all
It's
seen
going to
what's
be a
happening
mix. I
recently.
don't think it's one or the other, although they'd
It's
love it
not,
to be one. And the government wants something. Consumers make the final decision.
and they're speaking, right? And now we've seen
Oh,
some of the
yes.
challenges with EVs, but that
Mm,
means it's a real concern. It's a real challenge for the suppliers and the auto companies,
mm.
because what percentage do we expect EVs to have, and then how do we plan our production accordingly? Because if that percentage is fluctuating, we could
It
produce a
is.
whole bunch of
Yeah.
EV parts and be stuck with them, right? And that's what's happened in some cases. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of things to think about.
It's interesting. There's a lot going on, I think, behind the scenes that consumers don't see. So to bring this full circle or make a U-turn, we put it car
Yeah.
related. The future of flying cars, we saw it at the Detroit Auto Show. There will be some sold. When's the next time we're going to see vehicles flying, in your opinion? Purely your opinion, because we
Uh,
have to put a bow on this. So
well, we we have drones that are flying right now, so I guess that's a vehicle. But in terms
true.
of car you and I could get into and fly in, I don't see it happening in the next 10 years. But I could be
I don't
entirely
either. I
wrong.
agree with you. And the same thing's true with autonomous cars.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you're coming from the data side and I'm coming from the consumer side and the industry side. And it's as they merge together, and there's a lot of merging going on. I think we're in agreement that flying cars are really cool. And if you got a pilot's license and you can get one and you can figure out how to get the state to approve you, which probably every state's going to be different,
Mhm.
you could be flying in a car that's pretty cool. Maybe John Travolta will get the first one.
Now you just
You
said
never
something.
know.
You just said something very interesting. That's because different states are going to have different rules. Let's assume we're living in a world of flying cars today, right? And different states have
Mhm.
different rules and licensing requirements. How will you know when you're up in the air that you've crossed a state line and now you're in a state where you're now illegal?
We had that problem with autonomous cars in, again, 2009. I rode from Palo Alto to the Consumer Electronics Show with Audi, and we stopped at the state line of Nevada and California and switched license plates. So it sounds like
Really?
we're in the early adaptation of potential flying cars. We've all seen cool stuff, and anyone can
Yeah.
do a prototype, and anyone can sell a prototype. And I'm
Yes.
sure you can raise a lot of money, but I think they need someone like Infor behind the scenes, sort of controlling what's really happening in reality.
We'll be happy to talk to them.
Yeah, I think that's something that'll be good for the future. Well, I appreciate your time, Peter.
Thank you.
It's
It was
been
fun.
really enlightening and interesting because people are all thinking that I saw it at the Detroit Auto Show. This is going to be the future. I think we're not there yet, but it's certainly worth something to look into. And there's a lot of neat stuff coming with AI, making your
Yep.
life a lot easier.
Yep. Absolutely. And
All right.
thank
And
you
if
for
people want to know more about what you're doing, where can we find any information?
www.infor.com
Okay.
is our website, and that would be a good starting point. And they can
And
go
you
from
can
there.
learn about the data, you can learn about the infrastructure and what you're doing to
Yep.
help people make their life easier.
And if
Well,
they
thank you
want
so
to,
much for your time,
and I'm
Peter.
on LinkedIn too, so if they want to contact me there, that's another option.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your
Thank you,
time today,
Lauren.
Peter.
Pleasure talking to you.
Thanks so much for Peter Maithel from Infor. It was a very enlightening conversation. I'm sure you have additional questions and comments. You can reach him through his LinkedIn account or put your comments down below and let's start the conversation. If you'd like to support our channel and more of these interviews, you can buy me a cup of coffee. We appreciate your time and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Have you ever thought, why in the world is my wireless bill so darn high? What are we paying all this money for? Speed, coverage, data, access to 5G, unlimited talk and text, mobile hotspots? We are partnering with Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile offers all of these features for as low as $15 per month. They're reimagining the wireless shopping experience and made it easy and online. No stores, no salespeople, just huge direct-to-use savings. Why should you pay more when you have access to premium wireless? Mint Mobile runs on the nation's largest 5G network. Whether you use your phone to watch YouTube, listen to podcasts, or play games, you get the same speed and performance as the big guys while connecting to Mint's network. How hard is it to switch your service? Big Wireless wants you to think it's hard, but switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to digital eSIM cards, which most phones now have, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. And if your phone doesn't have an eSIM, Mint will ship you a new SIM card for free. Just go to trymintmobile.com/LaurenFix, also linked in the description down below, to get premium wireless for $15 a month.